We're starting with the last chapter for, in general for today, but also the last lecture on global marketing. So this chapter is focused on leadership, organization, and corporate social responsibility. When we talk about leadership, we usually are focused on kind of the hierarchy or the title or the status, but in reality, leadership is about vision, it's about influence, it's about mastering change, it's about leading this process of basically connecting, engaging at different levels in order to create the condition to create a great vision and strategy and then execute it in a great way. So like mobilize a number of people in the full realization, development and realization of the strategy. So as Carly Fiorina here, former CEO of Hewlett-Packard says, ultimately leadership is about people. So it's about attracting and motivating, retaining the best people and organizing them in a way that we can achieve success as an organization. So we can also say here the leader's task is to articulate the vision as far as the intended scope of activities in general, but also as a geography, the beliefs of the organization, how it's going to conduct business, the values according to which they're going to work, the policies that they're going to follow in their work. According to Christopher Bartlett from Harvard Business School, which is the leading educational institution when considered to be the leading educational institution in business, companies are realizing that they have a portfolio of human resources worldwide and that their brightest technical person might come from Germany or their best financial manager can come from England. So in other words, they need to tap into the qualities of people from around the world. In the past, the focus was primarily on the talent we can find in the home country of the corporation, but today it's more about really tapping into the best human potential available, no matter where they come from. Leadership in general is judged on the ability to identify, nurture, and exploit the organization's core competencies. Like this has been in the 90s the focus, while in the 80s the focus was on reorganizing the companies. The core competencies, according to this presentation, this way of looking at leadership, is that core competencies includes providing potential access to a wide variety of markets, making a significant contribution to the perceived customer benefits, and create competitive advantage that is difficult to imitate. In terms of organizing for global marketing, our goal is to find a structure that enables the company to respond to relevant market environmental differences, to ensure the diffusion of corporate knowledge and experience throughout the entire system. So rather than create a top-down approach, which was the old way, it needs to come from all countries, all areas, and it can beyond the usual borders which we're used to seeing. Organizations also, they need to find balance between autonomy and integration. They have the need for autonomy to adapt to local markets while integrating the business into a global market strategy. So we somehow need to provide this autonomy, but at the same time be able to unite everyone around the global strategy. What's important also to understand is that in global marketing, there's not a single best structure. So we cannot open a textbook and say, okay, this is the way we should do it. We need to find the unique way, the unique structure that best fits our strategy, best fits what we're trying to achieve. One thing that is clear today, we require flat and simple structures. People more and more dislike hierarchy and appreciate more simple, more kind of human scale of interaction. There are a lot of trends, there are a lot of changes that came with 21st century, and today organizations need to be really creative in how they organize themselves so that they're flexible, efficient, and at the same time responsive to meet the demands of both globalizing markets and local markets. Now, there are some patterns of international organizational development. First, organizations vary in size. They vary in as potential in terms of what are the potential or targeted global markets and what are the local management competencies. In general, the conflicting pressures may arise from in terms of products and technical knowledge, functional area expertise, and area and country knowledge. So we have here some examples on how we could structure the company. So this is an example kind of an older way of doing things, although it's still, we can still find this way. So the top part of the picture is how we would traditionally do it. But what has been happening in the last years is recognizing the need for having, in this case, we're giving example with having a vice president of international division. So somebody who is under the president, but really focuses on the needs of the different functional areas by country. This structure has further been, so actually first on this structure, there are four factors that have led to the development, to the need of having international division. So first of all, top management has really recognized the need to grow internationally, and they have understood that this comes with specific difficulties. They understood the complexity of international operations and the need for internal specialists to deal with the demands of global operations. They also recognize the importance of proactively researching, scanning the global horizon for opportunities and threats. The further development as far as structure brought the existence of different regional managers. So here, as you see, we not only have the international division staff, but we also have area managers by regions for Europe, Latin America, Middle East and Africa, Far East. So this division could differ country by country, depending on where their focus is on and how they see the synergies between different areas. But similar division is actually it's typical for many companies. So then in each, so we have both the functional areas as well as the geographical division, and that has brought the development of the so-called matrix design. So in a matrix design, a specific person can have 2 to sometimes 3 bosses. So for example, if you're a marketing director, for example, for, what's a good example? Let's say for Germany, you would be working together under the marketing director for Europe, who is working under the marketing director, global marketing director. But you're also working under the country director for Germany, who has a focus on the country operations. And you could be also working under, let's say, a project leader for a specific project focus on, for example, introducing new technologies in marketing. So this could be a global project you're part of, which has a separate director. So in a matrix structure, we are trying to look for a balance, bringing the different perspective and skills to accomplish organizational objectives. So we're at the same, one and the same time having leadership by product or business, by function, by geographical area, sometimes by type of customers. So in a matrix design, we have people focused on geographic knowledge, so they're more focused on the specific countries, for example, in the region. People focus based on product knowledge and know-how, functional competence, so this would mean marketing, finance, production, so on, and knowledge of customer or specific customer, specific industries. So this is one of the ways a matrix structure can look. So for example, here you have the product manager division 1, who is working under within the structure of France in this case, but is also working within the product division regional headquarters as far as production division under Europe, area headquarters for Europe. So matrix design in general brings a lot of complexity. It brings a lot of possibilities for conflict objectives, conflict, because the interests of the production division are one, of the marketing division are different. The European objectives are different from the global objectives. The French objectives could be very different from the European and so on. And when you have several bosses, basically, you need to deal with these conflicting objectives. So that creates challenges, but it also is the only way if we want to ensure certain continuity in how we do marketing across the world, in how we produce, in how we do finances. So in order to coordinate and also to ensure innovation and standardization according to the around the world, this is kind of one of the most popular structures big companies use. Lean production is something that has become very popular in the last years as we see more and more pressure to become more efficient. This is an innovation that happened at the end of last century, started in Japan by Toyota, then spread in other companies, and now we studied it across the world. So lean production is really focusing on doing the production the most cost-efficient way, using least resources possible. So when we, here we can differentiate between craft production first and mass production. So craft production, which is also called job production, means that we are doing one product at a time. So one worker focused on one product and so on. Mass production is we produce many standardized products in big quantities, usually automated. And here the worker has a specialized area of activity. So it's very different from the first one in the sense that in the first one we need people who are really masters of several different skills in order to be able to produce a whole product, while in mass production we need people specialized in a specific area. of work. Lean production focuses on using less factory space, smaller inventories, better quality control methods, and increase efficiency. And the result, when we apply such, it's actually a mindset change as well as change in processes and how we do things in management and so on. So the result could be 50% better efficiency over typical mass production. So obviously, when we're talking of big businesses and big companies, this is a huge difference. That could be the difference between succeeding and developing competitive advantage and not. So in lean production, we have the so-called assembler value chains. So a couple of things here are typical. So we need more skilled employees than we would use in mass production. So we need high level of mastery skills training. We usually apply Kaizen, which is a strategy or a mindset, organizational mindset, which is focused on continuous improvement across all parts of the company, on all layers, all employees. And we also here introduce flexibility, which is again different from traditional mass production would be very inflexible. We set it up and there's one way of doing it, and that's that. As far as downstream value chains, so lean production also requires downstream redesigning downstream value chains. The focus here is on eliminating any conflicts or any possible inefficiencies between the producer and intermediaries. So it introduces the spirit of cooperation across the value chain. And without that, so basically it introduces a new mindset in terms of how we work together inside the company and externally with other stakeholders. And these are the key aspects of lean. The next very important aspect for today's companies is how we deal with ethics, corporate social responsibility, and social responsiveness. So today we expect the CEO to be a proactive steward of the firm when it comes to these three different aspects. In the past, it was acceptable that the CEO's focus is only profit and shareholders. Today, we expect a focus on all stakeholders. So we have this internal and external or primary and secondary stakeholders. So the primary are managers, employees, customers, stockholders, suppliers, and then the secondary are general business community, local community groups, pressure groups, non-governmental organizations. So corporate social responsibility by definition is an obligation to pursue goals and practices that are in the best interest of society, not just of shareholders, not just internal stakeholders, not just primary, but all the stakeholders we mentioned. So in order to achieve this, many companies introduce code of ethics. So this is usually higher standards of behavior and values and ways of doing business, higher than what the law requires. According to the CEO of Starbucks, in his response to anti-globalization activists, he said that we have the opportunity to be a different type of global company, a global brand that can build a different model, a company which is a global business that makes a profit, but at the same time demonstrates a social conscience and give back to local markets. So in this case, he said it based on pressure, but from outside. But I think this is what all companies are experiencing today. We're seeing more and more clearly how it's not enough to. It's not good enough to wait for somebody to pressure us to do good. We need to be proactive and meet the bigger demands of society today in terms of how we treat people, how we source materials, how we treat the environment. Now, of course, this is easier said than done. Corporate social responsibilities comes with a number of challenges. For example, in some cases, when international companies decided not to use child labor, actually children were left worse off. So in some cases, we've seen that parents were forced to sell their children because they were so poor that when the children were not being employed, they had to. So things went worse. So this is showing how it's not just important to say, oh, this is the more ethical thing to do and just do it without understanding local, the local specific, but it's important to really understand the full spectrum of the problem and act in a way that creates value for society and not just sounds ethical. We have here other examples of, in terms of working conditions, in terms of using unfair labor practices. Also, CEO payments and in general top leadership payments are being under attack because we've seen rising inequality. So we've seen major increase in top management pay and very little increase in the average worker. Going back to Starbucks, there are some lessons we have learned from them. So one of them is that companies could be targeted for criticism, but they're also good candidates for collaboration. So instead of waiting for the crisis and then start collaborating, we need to think strategically. We need to think ahead of everybody and establish good relationships with non-governmental organizations, with pressure groups, with government. So basically, understand, anticipate, research, and understand the problems we may face and proactively create strategies that address that problem. Obviously, this is expensive. It takes time. It takes time to build relationships, but it turns to be the better strategy, because going kind of against the trends can be more expensive if we wait to be attacked by somebody that we're not being socially or environmentally responsible. Then it can be much more expensive. So this is the last slide for this presentation. And we're going to go now into the case of Unilever. Do you have any questions in terms of what we covered so far? Okay. Okay, so if you don't have questions, what about, have you read the case of Unilever? Okay, so I'm going to present you the case here, and this is the final thing we're doing today. So Unilever is, I mentioned the company name, they're one of among the top companies in the world. They are one of the biggest, one of the companies with the biggest advertising budget, and one of the companies that has a lot of, so Unilever itself as a company is known only by let's say, less people, but many of their brands are household names. Like we're mentioning here the Dove products, the Lipton, Magnum ice cream, but also I think Ariel, if I'm not mistaken, the washing powder is theirs, and a number of other ones. So basically we have hundreds of brands. Ben and Jerry's we're mentioning here. There are hundreds of brands that we know, and they're household names, and you can find them in any supermarket around the world. And they're part of Unilever's product portfolio. So the company has approximately 167,000 employees. And in 2016, their sales were 52.7 billion, which is about, in euros, which is about 60 billion. Unilever's roots can be traced to the northern English town of Port Sunlight on the River Mersey, where in 1988, the company was, it started first as a garden village for the benefit of employees. So a lot of things have obviously happened. So between 1888 and 2008, the company has become a global force. And what the Unilever Group Chief Executive Officer, Patrick Cheshow, I'm not sure the name, how it's pronounced, he announced a new strategy enabling the company to reconnect to its heritage of sustainability and concern for the environment. So Unilever's philosophy is on doing well by doing good. One example, which is, it's kind of a textbook example in marketing, is the campaign of Dove, which you may have seen. So basically Dove was driven, so they basically created this campaign for real beauty, which was driven by the understanding that women have a really poor, they really have low self-esteem and do not consider themselves beautiful. So they made this campaign with showing real looks, real body types, instead of the usual ads which are focused on these beautifully looking women with beautiful proportion, beautiful skin. So they started showing real people with all their imperfections, and they started redefining what beauty means. So this is an example of real successful marketing campaign, because it a lot of the ads became viral, which means that people were distributing them without being asked. So this is the dream of any marketeer, to develop commercials that people pick up and spontaneously distribute across the world. This is not the only way in which the strategy was manifested. So for example, we're giving example here that they changed the detergent business towards using fewer chemicals and less water, plastic, and better packaging. So this was in response to the fact that they recognize that today's consumers are much more conscious when they choose products they buy. And this is exactly what we were talking. So this is, instead of waiting to experience pressure from consumers and from non-governmental organizations and governments, they proactively decided to start changing their products. Another thing they did is they also saw huge opportunities in emerging markets such as India and China. As we have now several times talked about, India and China are part of the so-called BRICS countries, which are represent very huge in size markets with huge, which are experiencing quite big growth. It has declined a little bit in the last years, but it still remains to be higher than the growth we see in developed markets. In this case, we're explaining, and again, I recommend you reading all the cases we've covered and the rest of the cases in the book, because they illustrate, so they make it more easy to understand the theory and to understand the real challenges which business leaders are facing. As we're saying here, they must be able to articulate a coherent global vision and strategy that integrate global efficiency, local responsiveness, and leverage. So the leader is the architect of an organizational design that is appropriate for the company strategy, and his role is to really put it all together and unite people around its execution in a successful, good way. A lot of these requirements are contradictory. What I mean by that is bigger social responsibility and bigger environmental responsibility means that means more costs. At the same time, there's a constant focus due to the large number of competitors in each market. There's constant focus on efficiency and reducing cost. Global efficiency and local responsiveness are also contradictory on first sight objectives. So really finding the balance between those and how much, which one, in which situation, which one is maybe a little more important than the other one. This is part of the difficult task of leaders in today's market environment. Let me see, go to the last part of this case. Okay, so we have the case continuing here. One of the interesting things for this company is that they had kind of management structure with two centers of decision making, one in Rotterdam and one in London. And they had to make changes in that regard. As the CEO said, so basically they introduced one CEO, and this was done basically instead of focusing on trying constantly to achieve consensus between these two centers. This was replaced by a single decision making, which speeded up, so made possible much speedier decision making. They also at some point faced a lot of criticism. According to some article that was published, they were draping themselves in a flag of corporate social responsibility to excuse poor performance. So basically they were saying, according to this article, they were using corporate social responsibility as kind of a window dressing, we call it, while in reality, the processes inside the company were not so good. Many companies do this mistake of marketing that they're being socially responsible, but not really doing the real changes that need to be done. And this can work for a while, I mean, the reason they don't do it because it's not cheap, it's not easy to sustain competitive advantage and at the same time make all these changes. However, when you start using this as a window dressing and it doesn't reflect the real changes in companies, something like what happened to Unilever can happen. So in their case, Greenpeace launched an advertising campaign alleging that Unilever's purchases of Indonesian palm oil were contributing to rainforest destruction. So palm oil is a key ingredient in Dove soap, as well as many other products, Magnus ice cream, Vaseline lotion, and so on. And actually, Unilever is the world's biggest palm oil customer, buying approximately 1.4 million tons each year. So basically, Greenpeace identified, now obviously Unilever was not the only reason why we saw huge levels of rainforest destruction, but they chose them as the biggest player on the market. And they had a whole campaign using their Dove campaign, which was very successful, but kind of using that now negatively. And they, for example, showed pictures of orangutans with the headline, "Gorgeous or Gone." So basically they ridiculed, made fun of what was a really successful marketing campaign and turned it into very huge negative publicity. That was Greenpeace activities ended up really successful in the sense that they forced Unilever to call up a moratorium on rainforest destruction by Indonesian oil producers. And now they need to prove so anybody who is providing them with raw materials now needs to prove that rainforest has not been sacrificed in the production process. Now, this is an example of a successful campaign from an NGO, but from Unilever's perspective, they could have predicted that. They could have acted earlier. And yes, it was going to be expensive for them to make such requests or do something like that, but I think it was more expensive, like in the way it happened. So it had much more negative consequences. So the result of all this, they changed a lot of things, but then again, not as much as we wish to see. So for example, by 2011, only 2% of Unilever's palm oil purchases were coming from traceable sources. Okay, so even though they still have this commitment to improvement, so I mean, is that enough? Is it enough seeing this change to 2%, or do we as customers require more? So this is a question. This is also the role of customers. If we continue to buy products that are done in unsustainable ways, we're actually being part of prolonging the finding of a solution. So we have also responsibilities as customers to, if we want to see changes, to actually buy more sustainable products, and this will justify faster change for companies. To support all these changes, Unilever also did a lot of, so they needed to improve profitability, and they focused on reducing bureaucracy. They removed several management layers. So to give you an idea of the magnitude, they reduced top management headcount from 25 people to 7. They also removed many brands that were not as successful, which focused them on the brands that are really working. They also closed dozens of factories. So this is pretty dramatic when such a big company decides to improve efficiency, productivity. This could mean huge movements on local markets. A lot of people left without jobs and so on. So in their last, they also, throughout all this transformation, they counted on emerging markets. And they had a number of strategies in these emerging markets, how to establish themselves. Then we have, so basically here in the case, they give you the different focuses on each, with each different CEO had. I'm not going to go into all the details. But the questions we need to ask ourselves here are, if a company such as Unilever has to make trade-offs between being a good corporate citizen and making a profit, which should be the higher priority? And how can we justify being a good corporate citizen if it costs more money and eats away from the budget? Also, what was appropriate in this palm oil protest? To what level is Unilever's responsibility, and to what level is it the responsibility of the producers? So where is the line? And where's the line also in being proactive and reactive to things like that? And what is the management structure, culture, values that can actually support a more sustainable, more responsible way of management? Also, is it correct? Was it a correct decision to have to move the headquarters in just one country and to unify the leadership? I mean, these are a lot of very important questions. It's very easy. For example, if we are concerned with the environment, to say, oh, they should do this or they should do that. In reality, it's easier said than done. And in order for us to see more sustainable and socially responsible businesses, there's a number of things that need to be done on government level, on customer level, on management level. So it's on all stakeholders actually need to make changes if we're to see a more sustainable, more kind of better future. Okay, so with this we have finished the material that we need